My aunt actually covered her mouth when she laughed, like she was trying to be polite about it, like the laugh was something embarrassing that had escaped before she could stop it. "A sealed envelope," she said, shaking her head slowly. "While the rest of us get a company, a penthouse, 3 cars, and a yacht. You get an envelope." She said it the way people say, "Bless your heart" in the South. Soft. Devastating. Meant to land. I didn't respond. I picked up the envelope, slid it into my coat pocket, stood up, and walked out of Paxton Ridwell's law office on East Pratt Street into the January cold of Baltimore, with my family's laughter trailing behind me like exhaust. Let me tell you who I am, because you need to understand that before you can understand what was waiting for me. My name is Sloane Hargrove. I was 26 years old in January 2025. I'm a registered nurse at Johns Hopkins Hospital, night shift, trauma unit. I make $58,000 a year. I drive a 2014 Honda Civic with a bumper sticker from a 5K I ran 3 years ago that I keep meaning to take off. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Remington that I share with a rescue cat named Bernard, who knocks things off shelves purely for sport. By every metric my family uses to measure a woman's success, I am a disappointment with good parking karma. My grandfather, Edward Hargrove, died on January 8, 2025, at age 84. He went to sleep on a Tuesday and didn't wake up. The coffee maker he'd set the night before brewed a full pot that nobody drank. His alarm went off to an empty room. And just like that, the only person in my entire family who had ever looked at me like I was worth something was gone. The will reading was efficient and brutal in the way that only the redistribution of a dead man's love can be. To his son, my Uncle Brantley, 60% stake in Hargrove Maritime Logistics. Annual revenue, $12 million. 20 years of waiting, handed over in one sentence. To his daughter, my Aunt Margot, the penthouse apartment at Harbor Point. 3 bedrooms, harbor views, market value $3.2 million. She'd been measuring those closets with her eyes for a decade. To his 3 grandchildren, Brantley's kids, Camden, Priya, and Fletcher, a 2023 Porsche, a 2022 Mercedes-AMG, and a 1967 Shelby GT500 Mustang, plus equal shares of the yacht Meridian, a 54-foot sailing vessel docked at Chesapeake Bay Marina. And then, to my granddaughter, Sloane Hargrove, I leave the contents of a sealed envelope to be opened by Sloane alone. Do not open this in front of them. Open it when you are alone and follow it. The envelope slid across the conference table toward me. My name in my grandfather's careful, deliberate handwriting. The same handwriting that used to leave notes on my apartment door when he dropped off soup during my overnight rotations. Eat this. Don't argue. Love, Pop. 3 seconds of silence. Then Aunt Margot laughed. I opened it in my car. A 2014 Civic in a parking garage on Lombard Street, heater running because it was 29 degrees and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. 3 things inside. First, a one-way plane ticket. Baltimore to Nice, France via Paris. Departure, January 18th, 7 days away. Second, a handwritten note. 5 lines. Sloane, don't let them make you small. I gave them what they think they want, things that cost money, and demand more of it. I'm giving you what I value most. A promise I kept. Go to Monaco. A driver will meet you at Nice Airport. Show up, say little, and pay attention. Everything I couldn't give you in Baltimore is already waiting. Trust me one more time. Pop. Third, a photograph. Black and white, creased. 2 men on a boat, somewhere Mediterranean, the light doing that thing it does in old photographs. Too bright, too honest. One of the men was my grandfather. Younger, maybe 40, laughing hard at something. The other man was tall, silver-haired even then, with the posture of someone who had never once in his life wondered if he belonged in the room he was standing in. On the back, in my grandfather's handwriting, Lauren and me. Nice. 1984, the day after. The day after what? I sat in that car for an hour. I read the note until I had it memorized. I looked at that photograph until the 2 men stopped being strangers and started being a question I needed to answer. I almost didn't go. I want to be honest about that. Because my aunt's laugh was still in my ears. Because a plane ticket to Monaco felt like a punchline to a joke that was already at my expense. Because the rational, exhausted part of my brain that works 12-hour trauma shifts and hasn't taken a vacation in 2 years said, a plane ticket cannot compete with $18 million in assets. But the note said, trust me one more time. And I had never, not once, refused my grandfather anything. I flew coach. 7 hours to Paris, connection to Nice, 1 hour over water so blue, it looked digitally enhanced. I pressed my face to the window the whole descent. I'd never been to Europe. My passport had exactly one stamp in it, a Cancun trip I'd booked and cancelled because I'd picked up extra shifts instead. At Nice Côte d'Azur airport, a man in a dark suit stood in arrivals holding a card. My name on it. He looked at me the way people look at someone who doesn't match their expectation. The expectation was probably someone in a blazer. The reality was a woman in worn-in leather boots, a thrifted coat, and the specific exhaustion of someone who had cried in a parking garage 12 days ago and not fully recovered. Miss Hargrove, welcome to Nice. My name is Gerard. I'll be driving you to Monaco. Who sent you? Gerard straightened a fraction of an inch, the involuntary posture adjustment of a professional when they're about to say their employer's name. Prince Laurent, Miss Hargrove. He's been expecting you. The drive from Nice to Monaco is 30 minutes along the Moyenne Corniche, carved into cliffs above the Mediterranean. I didn't speak. I just looked. Green hills in January. Villages glued to rock face. The sea below, not green and working like the Chesapeake, but blue and ancient and indifferent, the kind of blue that has been blue for 2,000 years and will keep being blue long after every penthouse in Baltimore has crumbled into the harbor. Monaco is the size of a neighborhood, but it holds more wealth per square mile than anywhere on earth. We drove to the Palais de Pierre, the palace on the Rock of Monaco, 700 years of rule concentrated into one fortress on a cliff. The car stopped at a private entrance. A man was waiting at the end of a stone hallway. He was 78 years old, tall, silver-haired, wearing a gray suit with no tie and shoes that were well-made but not new, the shoes of a man who values quality without needing to perform it. He saw me, and something shifted in his face. The formal royal composure dissolved. Underneath, it was grief. You look like him, he said. Around the eyes. The way you hold yourself, he stood exactly like that. Like he was ready to move. You knew my grandfather. I knew Edward Hargrove for 41 years. He was the finest man I have ever known, and I made him a promise. I'm here to keep it. He extended his hand. His name was Prince Laurent, and he shook my hand like I was someone who mattered. We sat in a private room, overlooking the harbor. Between us, 2 glasses of wine and a framed photograph. The same photograph from my envelope. July 14th, 1984, Laurent said. Bastille Day. Your grandfather and I had been sailing my boat for 3 days, Nice to Corsica and back. On the return, a storm came in. Waves 4-5 meters. The boat capsized. He paused. I cannot swim. I grew up in a palace, not near the water. I was drowning. And your grandfather, a man from Baltimore who had been sailing since he was 12, dove into that sea and pulled me out. He swam 200 meters in a storm. He found me going under for the last time. He dragged me to a piece of the hull. We held on for 4 hours until the Coast Guard found us. I pressed my hand flat against the table. He never told me. He wouldn't. That was Edward. He didn't save my life for credit. He saved it because I was drowning and he could swim. The next morning, on the dock in Nice, they made a pact. Whoever died first, the other would take care of the person the deceased loved most. Not the estate, not the family. One person, the one who mattered most. Your grandfather told me about you years ago, Laurent said. The nurse, the granddaughter who drives to the marina on her days off, who sits with him in silence on the water. He said. Laurent paused and something moved across his face. Laurent, the girl has my blood. Not the business blood, not the money blood. The real blood. The blood that shows up. I couldn't speak. He chose you, Sloane. Out of everyone. The trust was $40 million. Funded the day my grandfather died. In my name. Already activated while I was working a night shift, and my aunt was laughing at my envelope. But Laurent wasn't finished. For 40 years, my grandfather had been his most trusted private investment advisor, managing a personal portfolio, separate from the royal estate, worth approximately $780 million. Real estate, shipping infrastructure, venture capital. Edward Hargrove, the man who wore the same flannel shirts for decades and drove a car older than some of his grandchildren, had quietly been one of the most trusted financial minds in Monaco. "I need someone to replace him," Laurent said. "Not immediately. You're 26. You have no experience in finance. And you are, if I may say so, dressed for a long shift rather than a board meeting. I'm a trauma nurse. I came here from a night shift. I know. Your grandfather was very proud." A pause. "I am offering you an apprenticeship in my private investment office. Not as an executive. You don't have the training yet. But you would learn. You would work alongside my team. And you would have the chance to become what your grandfather was to me." "Why me? You could hire an MBA from anywhere." Laurent smiled. The first smile since I'd arrived. "Because Edward didn't choose you for your resume. He chose you for your character. He said you sit with people at their worst moment and you keep them alive. He said you read the room the way he read the wind. Not with your eyes, but with something deeper. Brilliance I can hire anywhere, Sloane. Character is rare. Your grandfather had both. I'm betting you do too." I took 4 days before I answered. I walked Monaco. I sat by the harbor watching yachts bigger and shinier than my grandfather's Meridian, and somehow less beautiful, because beauty in a boat isn't about size. It's about whether someone loved it enough to show up every Sunday. I called my mother on day 2. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to hear the voice of the world I was choosing between. "Sloane, where are you?" "Monaco." Silence. Then, "You actually went?" "For an envelope. Pop left me a plane ticket." "And? What's there?" "Something I need to think about. Brantley is already restructuring the company. Margot is moving into the penthouse next week. We're all settling in very nicely." A pause, loaded with the specific satisfaction of a woman who has won a game I didn't know we were playing. "Don't take too long sightseeing. You have a life to get back to." I hung up and stood on my hotel balcony with the Mediterranean in front of me, and I understood something with cold, quiet clarity. My family would never see me. Not because they were evil, because seeing me would require them to examine the scale they use to measure people. And that scale, money, status, square footage, is the only one they have. Changing it would mean admitting that the whole architecture of their self-worth was built on the wrong foundation. People don't do that. They double down instead. On day 4, I went back to Laurent's office. "I'll take the position," I said. "When can you start?" "I need to go back to Baltimore. Give notice at the hospital. Handle my apartment. And say goodbye to something." "What?" "My grandfather's boat. Before my cousin sell it." Laurent looked at me for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone, spoke in rapid French, and hung up. "I've instructed my attorney to purchase the Meridian from your cousins at fair market value. When the title transfers, it transfers to you." I opened my mouth. "Your grandfather taught me to sail on that boat," Laurent said quietly. 1986, 2 years after he saved my life. "He taught me the same thing he taught you. How to read the wind. That boat is not a possession. It is a classroom. And classrooms should not be sold to strangers." It's July now. 6 months later. I work at Laurent's private investment office 5 days a week. I am learning, slowly, the way my grandfather learned everything, by showing up early and paying attention and asking questions that the senior analysts find either refreshing or exhausting depending on the day. I'm learning portfolio theory and real estate valuation and the specific art of managing wealth for someone who doesn't need more money, but wants the money he has to mean something. Laurent and I have dinner once a week. Real dinners, not business. He tells me stories about my grandfather that I never knew, facets of him my family never saw. The negotiations, the late-night calls, the time Pop flew to Monaco on 12 hours' notice because Laurent's wife was in the hospital and Laurent just needed someone to sit in the room with him. He talked about you constantly, Laurent told me last week. Not Brantley. Not Margot. You. He said. She reads the room, Laurent. Like I read the wind. The rest of them see the surface. She sees what's underneath it. The Meridian is docked in Monaco Harbor now.
I sail her on weekends.
Sometimes alone. Sometimes with Laurent. Sometimes I just sit on the deck while the sun goes down over the Mediterranean, slowly, generously, like it knows you're watching, and I think about a man who wore the same 3 flannel shirts and drove a car with a cracked dashboard and was secretly one of the most trusted, quietly powerful people I have ever known. My family got things. Things that break, rust, and depreciate. A shipping company bleeding debt that Uncle Brantley is now desperate to fix. A penthouse with property taxes that are quietly dissolving my aunt's savings. Luxury cars that will be sold when the insurance bills hit. A yacht they listed for sale 48 hours after the will reading. My grandfather knew all of it.
He designed all of it.
He gave them what they wanted. He gave me what he valued. And the difference between those two things is the difference between someone who loved his family and someone who knew them. The envelope wasn't nothing. The envelope was everything. It was a door that only opened for the person willing to walk through it. Through the laughter, through the cold, through the parking garage and the night flight and the 30-minute drive on a cliff road above the Mediterranean. My aunt said my grandfather didn't love me that much. She was wrong. He loved me more than all of them combined. He just showed it the way he showed everything, quietly, precisely, with a plan that only made sense if you trusted him enough to follow it. I followed it all the way to Monaco. All the way to a prince and a promise, and a boat that still knows how to read the wind. The wind doesn't lie, Sloane. That's what he used to tell me, out on the Chesapeake, watching the water move. People lie. Numbers lie. The wind just moves. Learn to read it, and you'll always know which way things are going. I'm reading it right now, sitting on the Meridian in Monaco Harbor, his photograph in my coat pocket, the sun going down the way it does on this coast. He gave me the wind. I'm still learning how to use it,